Welcome to this very important call devoted to building a safe and vibrant community of people who come from love and return to love every time fear comes up and threatens to build walls and separate. If you have been in other online communities like Facebook or out there in the socials, there are often questions you need to answer and rules you need to agree to so that the community can function. We will have those rules, but this discussion, this video you're watching takes it a step further. If you value humans and humanity, if you value equality, if you value safety and freedom as the basic humanity threads of safety and freedom, not as they have been politicized, demonized, weaponized, villainized, but true basic sense of human needs, safety, and freedom, if you value the common threads that run through all of humanity, through all of space and time, and if you have enough safety and freedom within yourself to not just allow for, but to go beyond and encourage and celebrate other human beings' self-expression, and you strive to not make someone else's expression mean anything that could damage your values or yourself, then you're in the right place. I did not mean to raise my thumb. Thank you, Zoom feedback reactions. You are also in the right place if you are a little or a lot, sometimes confused and scared about the current landscape, whether that's politically, socially, religiously, psychologically, emotionally, and physically. So many of us really want to learn and use our blessings and our privilege and our advantages to help others. But when it gets confronting, when it gets challenging or uncomfortable or discouraging, we lose hope, we lose focus, and we drop out of the good fight. And there's just one less person helping us turn towards love because we are activated and feeling ways that we have to then go regulate, which is also still good. We want to stay safe. Safety is good. I want you to stay safe because we don't have the skills sometimes in that moment, or maybe the knowledge of how to do it differently, how to speak up, how to draw lines, how to not dance around a subject. Sometimes we are still building the skills. So what you're going to learn in this little call, this little workshop, will help you learn how to stay safe and be an ally, be open to creating safe communities, doing community care while being able to stand for what you stand for. You can keep standing for your values, you can keep taking care of yourself, and you can keep being of service the best you can with this fortified knowledge. Sometimes the hardest part is knowing that I cannot get everything out on this call, that I'm going to make mistakes. As we learn, that's what's going to happen. I know it's hard for me, so it's probably hard for you too. And know that you are not alone. You can make mistakes here, and I'm not going to come at you with you made a mistake, you're canceled. Making mistakes out loud and learning and being committed to trying again and being safely witnessed is the best way we can grow in the ways we want to as human kindness. Learning how to create safety in this wild world, y'all, and how to offer allyship to each other matters. It starts close to home. It starts here in our little club because it has come to our front door. I would rather just do all the business coaching, all the music coaching, all the everything coaching, but I had to turn in the direction and say this matters because it's at our front door. What I've seen in myself and other humans that are highly intelligent, highly sensitive, is that most of the time we can feel a lot of emotions and notice a million different subtle things about what's happening around us. You're probably already tracking your emotions, other people's emotions, their language, how they choose to dress, how their body language is, their actions. And we can even believe strongly that we can perceive their intent. And sometimes that's true, and sometimes we can't possibly know what is also coming, where they're coming from. When I sit even with just artists and musicians in a very safe situation, I notice my desire to preemptively jump in and help them avoid pain. And I notice them feeling unsafe from making mistakes when they hit a wrong note. So I know it's real in these kinds of discussions. When someone is coming at me with anger, when someone's coming at me with vitriol, I have to remember and find safety in myself and remember that there is pain here for both of us. I believe humans are wired originally to love, to serve, to help, to share, to connect. That's my belief. It gets taught out of us, demonstrated out of us, beat out of us by life in different ways, and even by our own pain and our need for protection. We build walls. Sometimes it happens acutely and fast, as in situations that you all have shared. Sometimes it takes years of getting tossed about by life. When I see closed, angry, and hurtful kids, it's easier for me to see their pain. But when I see closed, angry, and hurtful adults, and I feel fear in my own body, and it's harder for me to see the pain, I still remember it's also being driven by pain. So what do you feel? What do you see? How do you be? How do you act? That's what we're here talking about this week. Because here's the good news. When you are rooted in love, even when you get afraid, when you come from love, when you are love, then you can unlearn anything that is not love. The most important work again and again to return to love is first inner work. It's first self-work. But even when you want to get better at and get back to love, you're going to make mistakes. I'm going to make mistakes. We're going to make mistakes and we're going to get better. So as we build a community of brilliant, messy creatives doing self-work, as we bring passions online and talents into the world and even make money doing it, we have an incredible honor and opportunity to build a community off of Facebook in our own world based in love and respect and safety and trust and self-expression. But first, here we're going to lay some groundwork, and you're going to be held to the standard of the groundwork that is laid here, of the self-work that's required also for any community to be safe and strong and to grow. I have once ran years ago a class that I offered for 8 weeks of a music group, and everybody came in and they were so scared and they were so vulnerable. But we built it over 8 weeks, the safety built, the pain that came out, we were there for it. Everybody started in a similar position, such that when we were done with the 8 weeks, they all said, we want more. So I extended it. We did another 12 weeks. At that point, everybody said, we want more. And I thought, but you're complete. You don't need me. You don't need to keep paying me. I tried to shut it down. That didn't go over well. So I opened it up like, okay, let's keep going indefinitely. I hadn't learned the lessons about group dynamics yet that I was going to. Things started happening when a new person would try to come in, because it's music. Anybody can come in and try this. The group would subtly have ways of being that othered that person, pushed that person, built a wall. They didn't mean to. Nobody meant to. Everybody was even kind. So I'm not even talking about the highly politicized, highly religious, highly any of the racist. We weren't even there. It was just some of them had safety and some of them didn't. And it helped me understand how something like Facebook can easily go from a fun-loving place real fast to not safe for everyone. So here are a few offerings. I'll tell you someday how that all ended, because it's still going. The gym group continues, and it's magical how that happened. But here are some offerings as we intentionally not start and finish here today, but start creating and building safe and inclusive community based in love and forgiveness with healthy boundaries and lines in the sand and zero tolerance where there needs to be zero tolerance. I'm going to give you some concepts. I'm going to lay them all out so you can have them all in one place. They might bring up some emotions, memories, questions, and we're here for that. You can bring them here. You are safe. You have private coaches, you have group coaching, and soon you will have a community. Because we want to get to the community where you all can tell each other, this is what I do. This is what I offer. Come on in. Let's start talking to each other on a more individual level. Now, you may have heard of some of these concepts or not. You might be more well-versed than me, but I offer this to you, even if it feels weird or even if I'm not as educated, because that's where we have to start, is where we are. What I'm not here for at any time is intentional hate or intentional harm. period, line drawn, you can see yourself out. If you're intending harm and you're intending to further any harmful situation, nothing else needs to be said. So here are the terms that we talked about that you are expected to at least understand and be working to understand more, to educate yourself in, and there are many resources we have for you. But to know what it means to have earned in your life the advantages you have, to fought for, to work for, to strive for, to learn and go out there and get skills that now you're benefiting from having those skills that you got through your personal effort and your persistence. Those are your earned advantages. And every single one of us has also earned and unearned advantages as part of being human. Those are the benefits that you received just by the circumstances of your birth, not by your effort. It could be the color of your skin, your race, your gender, your wealth. There are some things. It could even just be if you are in an able body. It could be so many things that I don't even know the categories of that you will educate me on. Here's another couple terms: competency and humility. In the general scheme of things, we all know competency is the ability to do something well. And humility is knowing that you need to be open to learning, owning your own mistakes, and not assuming you are always right and that you always know exactly what's happening. But when we bring the word cultural into that, cultural competency and cultural humility, cultural competency is, yes, the skill that you can understand and respect and work well with others and different cultures. You've probably learned about them academically, so you think you know something, and you do. But cultural humility is an ongoing practice of self-reflection and listening to those cultures, listening to other groups that you are maybe not a part of or don't understand where they're coming from, knowing you don't know everything and being willing to learn from someone else's lived experience. Cultural humility is a standard you will be held to in our community. The word allyship. Now, this one can be already even activating because some words have been pulled into the culture and now they mean something more charged. But what I mean here is actively supporting and standing up for people that have been marginalized or have had the experience of being othered, and supporting and standing up for them even when it's uncomfortable or inconvenient. Bias. Knowing that we all have biases and that we can heal biases, but that what a bias is a quick mental shortcut or a quick preference that happens on an automatic loop for you, for all of us, that unfairly favors or disfavors people or ideas. Usually it's unconscious, my friends. Virtue signaling is something that we don't need here. Saying or doing something just to look morally good without actually being able to put meaningful action and intent behind it, that is just signaling being virtuous. But you can still signal inclusion. You can signal that you are here to create safety. Even if you make a mistake, you can still signal inclusion and safety. That's using your words, being aware of your visual body appearance and your body stances, your behaviors, showing people that they are welcome, safe, and valued. And even if you were unconscious and signaled exclusion, coming back around and saying, I see, let me hear your experience. How can we undo that pattern, undo that harm, or repair that? A couple other notes, especially for highly sensitives, is the word saviorism. Saviorism, and some of you reflected beautifully on this and were able to ask questions of, have I done this? Did I do this? What was the impact? It's when someone, often someone in a position of privilege or advantage, tries to help and rescue and fix people or communities that they perceive as disadvantaged. Usually, though, without the collaboration or the consent sometimes, or the deep understanding of those cultures, of that person. It's usually centered in ego and the helper's ego and their desire to be seen as good. And it honors their needs and their strengths more than those of being those that they're trying to help. And that's very closely related to martyrdom. To be the martyrdom, being a martyr in this context that we're referring to, refers to the belief that suffering and overextending yourself, being empty yourself, being exhausted yourself, but still sacrificing yourself completely is a noble service to others. It is often also tied to being good and being perfect or being a tireless activist, but it leads only to burnout and resentment and disempowerment of others. So those are terms that I want to make sure you are here neutrally set before you before we have mistakes being made, that you can have the opportunity to already expand your knowledge, your abilities to do better. Because when we know better, my friends, we do better. So for example, if I were to put myself in those words, the education we just had, I was born part brown, but I am white adjacent. I present white enough that I can get in communities and be heard in a way where some of my brown counterparts cannot, or they are not treated the same. I can walk into a grocery store or any store, usually with a backpack on, and I don't get stopped. So to know that about me is to know that I have an advantage that can then be used to help people hear me that wouldn't hear other people in my same situation that are more brown or not as white adjacent or white presenting. That is not my responsibility. It is not my fault. I don't need to dip into shame for being able to do that. I just need to understand that it has an effect and I have an impact and I have a possible ability to do good and to benefit from that and help others benefit by me presenting, just being able to be a white presenting. I was born female, but I was taught to present very male, more like my male counterparts in school and at work. So I have skills on how to speak in a way that can be listened to. There's so much fucked up about that, but knowing that is personal power, and I can use it for good. I was raised in a very broken home, very divorced family with a great deal of fighting and addiction and poverty, but I always had access to food and shelter. So do you see how you can take your own life and see where you have earned advantages and unearned advantages? I was raised poor, but I still had access to education and scholarships so that I could advance my education. We all have disadvantages and advantages. I am able-bodied, heterosexual, in an athletic, strong body that is generally accepted by our population. Those are things that I am aware of. Can you be aware of for you that you might be using languaging? Maybe even you're born into a religious that is the most predominant religion of your culture. And so it's very easy for you to use words that seem normal, but you might not know that you're in amidst people that are affected by that and are trying to shore up how they can relate, how safe they are. Whereas if you were in a culture that you were hearing the word Allah or Krishna or something else more, you would feel like, oh, how do I fit into this culture? So I want to also introduce you to my coaches in this area and people that I turn to when I am learning, Simone Soul and Rashida Bonds. They are my go-to coaches, and I believe some of the best coaches in the world when it comes to creating safety and being an ally. Not from a politicized standpoint, but from education and do better and know better. Much of my work is inspired by them and based on what I've absorbed from being in their teaching and coaching spaces. So I want to acknowledge and give credit to them and encourage you to go look at their courses. They have a Sustainable Safety 101 course for a very accessible rate if you want to step towards this work with me. So many of us brilliant, messy, gentle creatives, we want to change the world for the better, but sometimes the world seems so big, too scary, too messed up to even try. So we stop, we freeze, we take ourselves out of the game. We have to self regulate and calm our nervous systems until we feel ready. I understand that. So I love it when Rashida says, you don't have to change the big, scary world. You just have to change your world. It is about your sphere of influence and doing community care where you can. Your world is connected to the greater world. As you change your world, you change the greater world. So if you're afraid or ashamed and wondering if you have racist, sexist, ageist, any learned tendencies, if you're worried you might be coming from fear and protection more than love, don't worry, you will. I will. Every human will. But if you're so worried about offending and hurting people that you grow frozen or rigid and become unwilling to try, I want you to know that we're all going to make these mistakes either way. But unlearning, just like learning, cannot happen unless you don't notice your mistakes and be a safe witness to yourself, to your own mistakes first, offering then other people to make mistakes. And even that word was igniting for some of us this week. But that is the way of both learning and unlearning, is whatever you want to call a mistake that works in your vocabulary. Now, what I'm going to say next is probably one of the most important things I'm going to say all day, maybe my whole life. And it's also the hardest for many to understand and accept. So I'm going to go slow. One of the key components of being a safe space, being an ally, offering safety, is what you do after you've made a mistake. If you get upset and angry and defensive and scared and hurt and back away and put down the fight and cancel the whole situation, we have one less safe person, one less person moving back into love. But if you become the witness, acknowledge the mistake, if you listen more than you defend because you want to learn and unlearn, a whole new opening gets born. If you can give yourself the safety to be able to say any combination of the next 5 sentences, oh my goodness, I see that I made a mistake. I see that harm has been done. I'm sorry. Help me understand what you experienced, and I am committed to doing better. If the whole world could grab even one of those sentences, this would be a very different place. And then once you pick the sentences or whatever sentences might work for you, and you get to work doing better and learning, even if that just means not making the same mistake again. Now, all of this is only possible when you have acknowledged and accepted your earned and unearned advantages, when you have cultural humility, when you know how to create safety first in yourself, then you can extend that safety to your community. This is what signals to the person who has been harmed that you are safe. Because the alternative, and what I've seen happen over and over again, and even done myself, is we get so freaked out that we made a mistake, or that even at the word mistake, it brings up so much shame or blame or worry we're going to get sued. We get so freaked out that we aren't being seen or heard or understood, that we're not that kind of person that would actually do that. And we protect ourselves so much. And then instead, we protect our ego and ourselves more than we are interested in the person who has been harmed or who has felt unsafe. Now, I know you are not responsible for anyone else's feelings. They are. But we're going to talk about it in a moment, that you are still responsible for the effect of your communication. Rashida gives a lot of training, so she sits with a lot of what are now nicknamed, I think, appropriately or inappropriately, white lady tears. And she said it very succinctly: when someone has apologized to me instead of getting all defensive, it tells me they are a safe space. The person who jumps to their defense tells me their ego is more important than my liberation. And she can unpack that for you. But when you have witnessed harm, done harm, and they see the person that is in unsafety sees that they're not in a safe space, they're going to find another space. And that is not what I stand for here. I stand for this being the space that they find. Now, if you felt burned in the past by making mistakes, I understand that you might want to talk that through and process that. I'm here for that too. That's part of your self-expression. But to not understand the bigger picture of what's happening for everyone is to perpetuate the problems of ignorance and harm. So I'm going to give you some common examples of power over and power under situations that do harm and have systemically done harm over time. We all have power in some ways and not in others, and sometimes we aren't even aware of it or not. And when you don't know them and you make a mistake and cause harm to another, it's even easier to be defensive because you feel innocent. You didn't even know. So to know better is to do better, my friends. Let's name them, because if they don't have a name, we can't define them and understand them and have common agreements about them. We can't do anything about them. But when we do, we can pay attention and we can make decisions. And many of you all have started that process just from this conversation this week. So the isms and the power systems that are related to bias and discrimination, we're used to hearing racism and sexism. But there's also ableism. Well, let me go through it. Racism, prejudice or discrimination against someone based on their race or ethnicity. Sexism, when you're othering someone, discriminating against someone's sex based on their gender, sex or gender. Ableism is when you have a bias, an immediate bias against people with disabilities. You might not know it. You might feel it in a certain way. We have to start being aware of that. I just learned that I have a disabled because I have to wear glasses. And I realized, oh my gosh, you're right. There are many times out there that I didn't even realize when I was typing up an email or writing something down when I didn't have to wear glasses. It was so tiny. I didn't realize how I was making an effect in the world. Now I do, because I go to so many places and I don't know what's going on. I can't read it. And it's new to me, so I can't read it, and I didn't bring glasses because I forgot I need glasses. Ageism is discrimination, of course, based on age, especially towards the extremes, elderly and youth. Classism, when we discriminate or have prejudice based on someone's social class or economic status. Colorism happens even within favoring skin tones over lighter skin tones over dark skin tones within the same ethnic groups. Sizeism is a bias against people based on just the physical body that they are living in or their weight. Heterosexism, assuming that heterosexuality is the norm and marginalizing other sexual orientations. Cisnormativism, assuming everyone is cisgender, meaning born into the gender that they now identify as, and marginalizing trans or non-binary identities instead of asking, what's your experience? Religiosism, I don't know how to pronounce some of them. Discrimination based on someone's religious or spiritual beliefs. There's so much ethnocentrism, nationalism. These are things, colonialism, xenophobia, fear or hatred of foreigners and strangers. That's taught into us sometimes by our media. Neurotypicalism. That's when we accidentally or intentionally have thoughts against people who have neurodivergent brains that operate differently. And we make mistakes all the time. It is not that we are to blame and to go to shame for our mistakes, but it is so that we can learn and become responsible and do better. So in 1 week's time, this has brought up so many things for us, and I have gotten in so many amazing, incredible, intense conversations that I have felt hopeful, hopeless, encouraged, discouraged, scared, loving, angry, understanding, super judgmental, grateful, shocked, sad, amazed. I've felt worked over the coals, fortified, energized, exhausted, depressed, shut down, ignited, not seen or heard, totally seen or heard, connected, supported, loving, and loved. If I felt these, I bet you have too. As my fellow brilliant, messy, gentle creative, I'm guessing you on a daily basis feel these same things too. So I want to acknowledge you for showing up again and again, staying present as best you can, not perfect, not even perfectly present, but present in whatever way it means for you right now. To talk about community care and to create safety in your sphere of influence is deeply nuanced and deeply important. So in this community, we are not here to debate politics or which religion is better. But we will accidentally veer off course, and that might be someone's self-expression. It is always my intention in our community to return over and over again and again to the common threads of humanity, to return to love even when fear is loud. We are getting at the heart of what happens when we try to create belonging in a world that is full of fear and trauma and unmet needs, but also sometimes that world is intentionally exploiting and even promoting fear and trauma and unmet needs. We are not here for that. This is a coaching space. It's not even a therapy space, which is different. Therapy is for unhealed wounds of your past. Therapy is to look at diagnoses and heal those diagnoses, to heal trauma. It gets you to the present so you can function. Coaching is to take you from the present into a future that you imagine as possible and probable and even inevitable someday as you have healed and continue to move in the direction that you choose. So I want to close with some healing practices, and I really appreciate the conversations that have been happening and that are going to continue to happen even when you're hurt and scared, especially when you're hurt and scared. But I ask that in return, while you are expressing who you are, you also consider, we are all adults here, consider the effect that your communication, that your expression has on your community, because your expression also matters and has an effect. I am not open to, and this community is not the place to debate what I call business as usual politics or religion. But instead of drawing lines and treating everyone like angry teenagers and telling you what's not okay and what you're not allowed to say, what rules you are forced to follow, we will have guidelines and agreements, yes. But I will say the politics here is community care and safety. Do no harm, and when you've done harm, do repair. And the religion here is love, respect, and forgiveness with zero tolerance for intentional hate or intentional harm. I know that the people who are already listening to this, we have been building the club, none of them mean intentional harm. Doesn't mean we don't still do harm. The main concept I want to leave you with is what we have been referring to, and you may be heard in my language, othering. And what I mean by othering is when you see or treat someone or an entire group of someone's as fundamentally different, less than, or outside of the norm, the effect is exclusion, isolation, marginalization, and villainization, or even dehumanization. So when you draw a line and you say, I am over here and you are over there, and where I am is better, and I cannot hear where you're coming from. I cannot relate, and I don't even want to try. This can be subtle. It can be overt. It can show up with words. It can show up in your body language, in what you're supporting, what you believe in, what you vote for, what you buy. But it also has an effect of reinforcing power dynamics, unconsciously or consciously, that then are used to control and justify unequal treatment. Weird thing is it usually feels like you're protecting yourself, standing up for yourself and your values. But we have to be clear when we are rooted in fear and discomfort versus when we are rooted in love and connection. The example I gave was a student with a disability coming to a new school. Teachers are kind, classmates are polite. No one sits next to them at lunch, though. There's no bullying, nothing overt, just silence, just subtle othering. Maybe you've had this experience that someone doesn't see you as a threat, see you as dangerous, but they don't see you at all. They don't treat you like they're treating other humans. that might be internalized to a human. A human being would internalize that as, I don't belong. And a lot of questions came up around whose responsibility is that? And do I need to apologize? So we have some work to do because we have some learning to do together. And we also looked at reverse othering, which is not the term I would like us to use here because it can be used to shut down equity work and social justice work. But the question is about something very real and very worth talking about. When our hurt turns into hypervigilance, when we have been hurt and then we build walls, when justice becomes retribution, or when our own form of empowerment becomes a new form of excluding others, that is also, better words for it might be gatekeeping or weaponized trauma, us versus them sort of language. So I want to ask you to do this healing. Think about where you have been unintentionally othered, and when you unintentionally othered someone, even when you thought you were helping, even by helping. And ask yourself, can a community protect its safety and also still stay open to people's self-expression? What's the difference between setting boundaries and creating barriers? These are questions I'm asking and answering as we go forward. What does shared identity, or when I should say, does shared identity become a form of connection and being together? And when does it become a way to be your own group and divide and push others away? And what does being accountable and holding each other accountable with love actually look like in practice? So instead of saying, you don't get it, you're different, you're never going to be able to understand me, consider, help me understand what you meant by that, and can I share how it landed for me? There are other words, there are healing reframes. Instead of you're not welcome here or that's not welcome here, we could try, I've never walked your path, but I would like to walk beside you. Or asking yourself, have you ever felt like you were invited somewhere but not really welcomed? These are nuances here. Consider the times you've felt invited but not welcomed. That experience has a name. It's othering, and it happens within families, friendships, boardrooms, classrooms, and even communities that are committed to safety and equity. So we have more terms to understand, but when you internalize trauma, or when trauma is actually doing the excluding, or we are in protective reactivity, we have survival coded responses and pain that is being recycled. These are things that are going to come up in any community. So when a newcomer comes, when someone comes in, we have to be responsible for the effect of our communication. To go from correction to connection, from being right to being real, from being guarded to being grounded. And we're not going to go with canceling. We're going to co-create repair, given that we also have some lines drawn in the sand. So I want you to understand why this matters. I want to understand what matters to you. And there's patterns that are always available to hurt us, and we can solve them. Our experiences are different, but our humanity is shared. So I'm going to leave you with, healing does not mean forgetting harm, but it does mean integrating and transforming it so that we don't pass it on. Where have you been othered, and where might you be othering back? Let's take a deep breath, my friends. And we'll pause right there.